Hi everyone, Wes here. In the last video I actually forgot to give you an example of the difference between buying an Australian property, a solid Australian investment, and say one in the US right now. So I want to do that. I just want to go through some numbers. So excuse me if I'm looking down, but I've actually got some details here that I want to run through so that I get the numbers right. What I'm talking about here is, if you can imagine, in Australia is a typical scenario. You buy a $300,000 property, right? Fairly standard. House valuation comes in at $300,000, yeah, because it's generally what the contract value is. The loan is going to be around about 80% so that you're not getting a mortgage insurance on it, so it's an 80% lend. So you're going to have a deposit of $60,000. So if you've got a $60,000 deposit, then you've got closing costs, your costs and rates and things like that costs and duties that you've got to close off, which would be another $20,000. And let's just say that you're getting a rental return on this of, it'll vary between $250 and $350 a week, but let's just say it's about $18,200 that you're getting in rent each year. The loan payments that you've got, because you've got $240,000, your loan payments at 7.5% are costing you $18,000 a year. So already the numbers should be ticking over in your mind. I'm getting $18,200 in, I'm costing me $18,000 to hold on my money. Yeah, plus I've got costs on top of that to manage the property and everything else, so all those costs aren't covered. So your rates, insurances and everything else could be another $3,000, and your rental management could be $1,250. So let's look at the cash on cash return. This is what's important. You need to understand the dollar that you put into the deal as to what your return is on that dollar straight away, excluding the capital growth. Okay, so the annual income in this case we're saying is $18,200. We've got a net operating income, which is the cost less your operating income less all your costs. So those costs were, you had $3,000 for rates and insurance, and you had management fees, which were $1,250. So it's $4,250. So that leaves you, when you subtract those from each other, $13,950. The annual debt servicing on that, you had $346 a week by 52 weeks. That's $18,000 a year. Your annual cash flow is obviously your $13,950 less your $18,000. So you're subtracting that, which means you go into negative now. Yeah, you're going into negative $4,050. That's how far you're down. Again, out of pocket. You're going to have to put that in each year. So your cash investment was $60,000. Plus you had your closing costs, that's another 20, so that's 80,000. So your cash on cash return is the minus 4,050 that you're having to pull out of your pocket to put into the deal. Divide that by the 80,000 that you've actually had to put in the deal to start with in the first place, and you've got a minus 5%. Minus 5% cash on cash return. To me, straight away, that is not a good deal. The only reason that you would take that deal up is if you actually had a lot of capital upside in that deal. Capital upside, capital growth in the property. Is that property going to significantly grow in capital growth right now? Let's look at that as an underlying reason why no, that's not going to happen. If the property is not paying for itself right now and the economy is not stable, which means jobs aren't stable and people aren't spending like they were spending previously, and they don't have the available cash to actually put back into things, assets and what they want to do, if they're not spending, means that everything's tightening up, which means that to service a property that's not paying for itself is going to be less people do that, which means it's not as affordable for someone to get into the marketplace. They're not going to have the same interest level to get into the marketplace compared to a property that's paying for itself. I hope that makes sense. Yeah? So you've got properties in the US, which I'm going to explain the numbers in a moment, that are paying for themselves. You've got a typical property in Australia that's not paying for itself.